It was a cold, gray morning on the edge of a forgotten highway, the kind of silence that only exists just before something extraordinary happens. The wind carried the faint sound of a child crying, lost in the distance, echoing between the mountains. That's when he appeared, a lone biker, his face hidden behind a dark helmet, his leather jacket marked by time and miles. No one knew where he came from. No one even saw him stop. But what happened next would leave an entire town questioning whether they had witnessed a miracle or just a ghost passing through. The boy had wandered too close to the road, unaware of the danger rushing toward him. A truck, out of control, barreled down the slope, its horns screaming into the air. In that instant, everything froze, except for the biker. He accelerated straight into the chaos, the roar of his engine tearing through the stillness like thunder. Some say he didn't hesitate, not even for a second. Others swear they saw something, a light, or maybe wings, but no one agrees on what they truly witnessed. When the dust settled, the boy was safe, lying beside the road, trembling but unharmed. The truck had overturned, smoke rising from the wreckage. And the biker? Gone. Vanished as if the earth itself had swallowed him whole. No tire marks, no trace of his bike, no sign he had ever been there. Only the faint scent of gasoline and a single feather resting where his boots had been. People searched for him for days, but the biker who saved a life simply disappeared, as if his purpose had been fulfilled. As the story spread, the town began to change. Locals started leaving flowers by the roadside, whispering prayers to the unknown man they called the Guardian on two wheels. Some began to believe he wasn't human at all, that he was sent by something greater, appearing only when fate demanded it. Skeptics dismissed it as coincidence, but even they couldn't explain the child's words when he woke up in the hospital. He told me not to be afraid. He said angels ride fast. That's how legends are born, not from glory, but from mystery. A nameless hero, a moment frozen in time, and a question that refuses to fade. Who was the biker who risked everything for a child he didn't know? And why did he vanish forever, leaving behind only silence and a story that still gives people chills whenever the wind hums across that lonely stretch of road? The next morning, the town awoke to the sound of distant engines and rumors spreading faster than the sunrise. The gas station clerk swore he'd seen the same black motorcycle parked by the cliffs just hours before the rescue, its chrome glinting under the moonlight. But when he returned to take a closer look, it was gone, not a single track on the dirt, as if it had never been there at all. People began to wonder if the biker had been real or just a shared illusion, a story born from adrenaline, fear, and hope colliding in one impossible moment. Yet, deep down, everyone wanted to believe that somewhere out there, on some endless stretch of highway, he was still riding. As days turned into weeks, the little boy started to draw. He filled page after page with the image of a man in black, riding through fire, his eyes hidden behind a visor that reflected light like glass. He smiled at me, the boy would say softly, and told me that courage is louder than fear. The doctors assumed trauma had played tricks on his mind, but his drawings had something hauntingly consistent about them. The same symbol etched on the biker's jacket, a white cross surrounded by wings. No one recognized it, not even the local motorcycle clubs. One evening, the boy's mother received a letter. It had no return address, only her name written in perfect handwriting. Inside, a simple message: he is safe because love never hesitates. Along with it was a folded photograph, an old, sepia-toned image of a man standing beside a vintage motorcycle, wearing the same emblem the boy had drawn. The picture looked decades old, and yet, the man's face, though half hidden by shadows, carried the same presence the witnesses described: calm, unshakable, eternal. The town's pastor began to visit the boy often, trying to understand what had truly happened that day. Maybe angels aren't what we think, he said one afternoon, staring at the photograph. Maybe they walk among us, wear leather instead of light, and carry the sound of thunder instead of harps. The boy listened quietly, holding his drawing close to his chest. He said he'll come back when someone needs him again, he whispered. And though it sounded like the imagination of a child, even the pastor couldn't bring himself to doubt it. That night, a storm rolled in. Lightning cracked across the sky, and through the sheets of rain, A distant engine roared, a deep, echoing growl that made the windows tremble. The boy smiled in his sleep, whispering the same words the stranger had told him on that burning road. Don't be afraid. Angels ride fast. Months passed, but the story refused to fade. Truckers swore they saw a black motorcycle tailing them through fog-covered highways, only to vanish whenever they stopped to look. Travelers told stories of near accidents where a flash of chrome appeared just long enough to divert disaster. To some, it was superstition, a tale to make the lonely roads feel less empty. But to others, it became faith, the kind of faith born not from religion, but from something deeper, the belief that goodness doesn't die. It just keeps riding. The boy grew stronger. He stopped fearing the dark, and every time he passed the spot where the accident had happened, he left a small stone by the roadside, a quiet thank you. Soon, others began doing the same. Within a year, the place had transformed into an impromptu shrine. Helmets, gloves, flowers, and even motorcycle parts were left there, each carrying a message scratched into the metal or inked onto the leather. Ride safe, wherever you are. The site became known as the Angel's Bend, and people traveled from far away just to see it. Journalists tried to investigate, digging into old records, searching for anyone who matched the biker's description. They found nothing. No name, no license plate, not even a report of a missing motorcycle fitting that model. But what they did find was stranger still. Sightings of a similar figure going back decades, from state to state, always connected to stories of survival, of impossible rescues, of lives spared by an unknown rider who vanished before help arrived. Each tale carried the same details: the black bike, the white cross, and the whisper of an engine fading into silence. One night, a documentary crew visited the boy and asked if he remembered anything else. He nodded, eyes distant. He said he once made a promise. The boy explained, to protect those who still have something good inside them. When asked what that meant, he looked up and added, he said he's not saving people, he's saving hope. The room went silent. There was something in his tone, something far too old for a child's voice, that made everyone shiver. And perhaps that's why, to this day, when the wind howls across those deserted highways and the night feels heavy with silence, many still claim they hear it. That low, distant growl of an engine, like a heartbeat made of thunder. Some say it's just the wind, but others? They pull over, close their eyes, and whisper a thank you to the road, because you never know when the unknown biker might return. Years went by, but the legend of the unknown biker never faded. It evolved. Truck stops began to sell small pendants shaped like motorcycle wheels with angel wings, claiming they brought protection on long trips. Graffiti appeared under bridges reading, "He rides with us." To most, it was just folklore. But for those who had seen something they couldn't explain, a near miss, a last-second save, the story wasn't just real, it was personal. Each believed that, in their darkest hour, the biker had found them. One autumn evening, an old mechanic named Walter stopped at a diner off Route 49. He was tired, grease-stained, and halfway through his coffee when he saw a black motorcycle parked outside, vintage, immaculate, like it had rolled straight out of another time. He went out to take a closer look. No plate, no dust, and on the tank, that same emblem, a white cross with wings. He waited for the rider to return, but after an hour, no one came. Then, just as he was about to leave, the wind picked up, and the motorcycle was gone. No sound, no trail, just the faint scent of smoke and iron in the air. Walter didn't tell anyone, at least not right away. But that night, his phone rang. His daughter had been in a car accident. The vehicle was crushed, but she'd walked away with only scratches. Witnesses claimed a biker had forced her off the road seconds before the collision, saving her life. Walter's hands trembled when he heard the details. The man was dressed in black, his visor reflecting blue fire, his voice calm as he said, "You'll be okay now." By the time help arrived, he had vanished into the trees. When Walter visited the crash site, he found a piece of metal lodged in the dirt. It was part of a motorcycle foot peg, old, worn, engraved with the initials RH. He carried it to the diner, where he pinned it on the notice board with a note that read, "Thank you for finding her." Days later, someone added another note beneath it. "He found me too." And then another. Within weeks, the board was covered in stories. People from all over claiming they had been saved by a man who shouldn't exist. The road, once forgotten, became sacred in its own strange way. Bikers began to ride in silence across that stretch of asphalt every year, headlights cutting through the mist, engines humming like prayers. They didn't speak his name, because he had none, but they all felt it, the sense that somewhere out there, on some unseen horizon, the Guardian still rode beneath the same endless sky. One quiet night, decades after the first sighting, a journalist named Clara decided to trace the legend's origin. She wasn't a believer. She was a skeptic chasing a headline. With a camera, a notebook, and an old map marked with sightings, she set off down the highways that cut through forgotten towns and ghostly plains. But the deeper she went, the more the road began to feel alive. Signs appeared where she didn't expect them. Gas stations she passed hours ago reappeared on her route. And each person she interviewed described the same thing: a rescuer who appeared just when all hope was gone. At a small chapel near the border, Clara found an old journal kept by a priest from half a century earlier. Inside, one passage was underlined twice. He came to confess, though he said he wasn't seeking forgiveness, only strength to keep his promise. The entry described a man in riding gear, his face hidden, speaking of a terrible accident years ago that had taken his family. Since that day, he had vowed to protect others from the pain he once knew. The priest ended the note with chilling words. He said he would ride until the fire takes him home. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she was following more than a myth, that she was walking the shadow of a man who had somehow outrun death. Every person she met along the way spoke of light, speed, and mercy, never violence. One trucker described a moment when his brakes failed on a mountain pass. Just as he lost control, a black motorcycle appeared beside him. The rider looked straight at him and shouted, "Hold on." The truck stopped at the edge of the cliff. When he stepped out, there were no skid marks, nothing to prove what had just happened. As the days went on, Clara began to dream. She saw flashes of chrome, fire, and a road that stretched endlessly into the night. In every dream, the biker rode ahead, never looking back, his taillight glowing like a distant star. When she finally reached the Angel's Bend, she found it silent and untouched. The old flowers had withered, but something gleamed beneath the moonlight, a single, polished motorcycle mirror resting on the stones. Etched on its edge was a message: "The promise remains." Clara picked it up, her reflection merging with the stars above. For the first time, she didn't want to write the story. She wanted to understand it, because deep in her chest, she felt something strange, a sense of calm, of being watched over. And as she drove away, she could swear she heard it again, the low, thunderous hum of an engine, fading softly into the wind. Weeks after her journey, Clara returned to the city, her notes filled with testimonies, photos, and strange coincidences that refused to align with logic. Editors laughed when she pitched the story. An angel on a motorcycle, they said. That's not news, it's folklore. But she couldn't shake the feeling that what she had seen, or felt, was real. Every time the rain hit her window, she swore she heard that same low rumble, like an engine idling somewhere beyond her reach. It wasn't just sound, it was presence. One night, as thunder rolled through the city, Clara drove home late along the highway. Visibility was nearly gone, sheets of rain slashing through her windshield, the wipers struggling to keep pace. She gripped the steering wheel tightly when she saw it. A child standing at the edge of the road, soaked, frozen in fear. Without thinking, she slammed the brakes and swerved. Her car spun, hydroplaned, and slid toward the guardrail. Everything slowed, and in the flash of lightning, she saw him. The biker. His headlight blazed white through the storm, and in an instant, he reached the child, lifting him to safety as Clara's car screeched to a halt just inches from the edge. When she stumbled out into the rain, gasping, the road was empty. The boy was safe, sitting on the grass, eyes wide but unharmed. The motorcycle was gone, no sound, no trace, only the scent of burnt rubber mixed with something faintly sweet, like ozone after lightning. Clara fell to her knees, trembling, her tears lost in the rain. She finally understood that she hadn't been chasing a myth. The myth had been chasing her. The police arrived minutes later, confused. They found no sign of another vehicle, no tracks, no lights. "Who helped you?" one officer asked the boy. The child looked up, still shivering, and whispered, "The man with wings." Clara froze. "What did you say?" she asked softly. The boy pointed toward the clouds, where thunder rumbled again. "He said he'd see you soon," he murmured. And then he smiled, the same calm, knowing smile the first rescued boy had once described years before. That night, as Clara drove home under the now clear sky, she saw something glowing faintly in her rearview mirror. A single feather caught on the wiper blade, gleaming white in the moonlight. She didn't stop to remove it. She just whispered a thank you and kept driving, her heart steady for the first time in years, as if she knew that somewhere out there, he was still riding, still keeping his promise. The years turned the story into something larger than life. They called him the keeper of the highways, the rider of light, the angel in black. Each name carried its own legend, but the core remained the same. A mysterious biker who appeared when death was seconds away and vanished before anyone could thank him. Scientists dismissed it, calling it coincidence and survivor's bias. But those who had looked into his visor and lived to tell the tale said otherwise. They swore there was something more in his presence, something that made the world pause for just a moment. Motorcycle clubs across the country began organizing Ride of the Unknown events every year, where thousands of bikers rode in silence to honor him. They wore patches with the white-winged cross, the same symbol the boy had once drawn. No one knew where the design came from. It just appeared, spreading across jackets, helmets, and tattoos like wildfire, a mark of unity among riders who believed in the unseen. Some said those who wore it had fewer accidents, as if the symbol itself carried his protection. During one of these rides, an elderly man named Raymond collapsed by the roadside, clutching his chest. Before anyone could react, a black motorcycle cut through the crowd, stopping beside him. The rider knelt, pressed a hand to Raymond's chest, and said, "Not yet, old friend." Within seconds, the man's breathing returned, his heartbeat steady again. When he looked up to thank the biker, there was nothing, only the sound of retreating thunder rolling across a cloudless sky. The medics who arrived moments later found Raymond conscious and bewildered. "He told me my son forgave me," Raymond said quietly. "My son died 20 years ago." Stories like this began to fill the internet, news feeds, and late-night radio shows. People debated whether he was an angel, a spirit, or something else entirely, a force that took form whenever someone's time hadn't truly come. The mystery deepened when a surveillance camera captured a blur of light during a highway explosion, a figure pulling someone from the wreckage just as the fire consumed the vehicle. When investigators slowed the footage, they could make out the outline of a motorcycle and a man cloaked in black, head tilted down, eyes glowing faintly like twin stars. No one ever managed to trace the origin of that light. The footage vanished from public records days later, as if it had been erased by fate itself. But those who saw it before it disappeared all said the same thing. He looked right at the camera and smiled. Decades passed, and the legend turned into a ghost story whispered between travelers, truckers, and drifters. Some said the unknown biker had finally disappeared for good, that his spirit had found rest. But legends never really die, they wait. And one summer night, under a blood-red sunset that painted the desert sky in flames, the impossible happened again. A convoy of cars on Route 54 was caught in a pileup after a tanker exploded. The fire spread fast, consuming the road in orange fury. Witnesses screamed, the air filled with smoke and terror. And then came that sound, that unmistakable roar. Deep, steady, relentless. Through the wall of fire came a figure, a motorcycle cutting through the inferno like a blade through silk. The flames curved away from him, bending as if repelled by his presence. He moved without hesitation, pulling drivers from burning wrecks, one by one, his leather jacket glinting in the light. A woman who survived swore she saw his visor reflect not fire, but a clear blue sky. It was like the flames were afraid of him, she said later, her voice shaking. He didn't burn. He didn't even slow down. When rescue teams finally arrived, the road was a wasteland of twisted metal, but every survivor was found in a line, laid carefully by the roadside, covered by the biker's jacket or gloves. The bike itself was gone. All that remained was a melted road sign bent into the shape of wings and a faint scorch mark that formed a perfect circle, as if an invisible wheel had burned its mark into the earth before vanishing. The media called it the miracle of Route 54. The survivors called it something else, the return of the fire. Scientists analyzed the burn pattern, but the results made no sense. The temperature of the melted asphalt was higher than any motorcycle engine could produce. There were no traces of fuel or rubber, no mechanical residue, no explanation at all. But among the wreckage, one firefighter found a fragment of metal that shouldn't have existed, a piece of a motorcycle frame, engraved with the words "Still Riding." It was turned into authorities, and the next day, it vanished from evidence without a trace. People began to say that he came back whenever the world was drowning in fear, that he rode through fire not to destroy, but to remind people that courage doesn't die, even when hope seems impossible. Some claimed he was the same man from the first rescue decades earlier, unchanged by time, untouched by age. Others believed he had become something else entirely, not man, not angel, but a force, a living promise burning brighter than the flames he conquered. Among the survivors of Route 54 was a young boy named Eli, no older than 10. He'd been trapped in the backseat of a car when the explosion happened, surrounded by smoke so thick he couldn't breathe. But when he woke in the hospital, the doctors said he hadn't suffered a single burn. His mother had been unconscious beside him, unharmed as well. When reporters asked how they escaped, Eli said something that silenced the entire room. "The man on the bike told me to close my eyes and listen to the wind." He said the fire can't touch those who still believe. Clara, now old, gray-haired, and still haunted by that night years ago when she'd seen him herself, visited Eli in the hospital. She brought her notebook, the same one she'd filled with stories and rumors decades before. When she showed him the emblem she had once found carved into metal, the white cross with wings, his eyes widened. "That's him," he whispered. It was glowing on his back. Clara asked what else he saw, and the boy hesitated before saying something that made her blood run cold. He looked at me and said, "You're the last one who will remember me." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, watching the city lights flicker like dying stars. Something about the boy's words stayed in her mind, the finality in them, the quiet sense of farewell. She wondered if the unknown biker had been watching over her all these years, waiting for her to understand that he was never meant to be found, only remembered. The next morning, she returned to the Angel's Bend, the place where it all began. The old shrine was gone now, erased by time and construction, but the road remained. She parked her car and stood in silence, feeling the same breeze that had carried the sound of engines decades before. The wind brushed her hair, gentle but heavy with something almost familiar. Then, faintly, just at the edge of hearing, the hum. Deep, rhythmic, steady. The sound of a motorcycle fading into the distance. Clara smiled through her tears. She whispered a single sentence into the wind. "Thank you for keeping your promise." For a moment, she thought she saw it, the flicker of a taillight at the end of the road, glowing red like the last heartbeat of a legend. Then it was gone, and in that silence, she knew the truth. He hadn't disappeared. He had simply become the road itself, endless, eternal, and waiting for the next soul who needed saving. Time has a way of burying truth beneath layers of disbelief. Generations passed, the world changed, highways became wider, brighter, and faster, but the legend refused to die. Truckers still whispered about him on their midnight runs. Bikers still left offerings at forgotten crossroads. And once in a while, late at night, someone would swear they heard it. That low, powerful engine breaking the silence just before disaster struck. It wasn't superstition anymore. It was memory woven into the asphalt, as if the road itself had learned to echo the sound of salvation. Eli grew up haunted, yet inspired by what he had seen. He spent years studying physics, searching for logical explanations, yet every attempt brought him closer to something he couldn't quantify, the invisible thread between fate and mercy. One evening, while driving home through the desert, he noticed something strange. Every time he looked into the rearview mirror, he caught a flicker of light behind him, a glint of chrome far away but steady. He stopped the car, stepped out, and stood in silence under a moon that looked almost metallic. There, faint but unmistakable, he heard the echo of an engine, the same one from his childhood. He didn't run. He didn't even turn around. He just said, quietly, "I remember you." And for a heartbeat, the air shimmered, heat waves rising off the sand, forming the outline of a man astride a motorcycle, visor glowing like a star. No words, no sound, just presence. Then the light faded, and the wind carried away the scent of smoke and iron once more. Eli sank to his knees, knowing that this wasn't a haunting. It was a goodbye. The promise had been fulfilled, and the rider was finally at peace. But peace doesn't mean absence. Across countless roads, in every country where asphalt meets horizon, stories began to surface again. Accidents avoided by seconds, children pulled from danger, lives spared by a stranger who vanished before anyone could speak his name. The descriptions were never the same. Some said he was young, others old. Some saw black leather, others white light. But the one detail that never changed was the emblem, the cross with wings, the mark of mercy on wheels. And so the myth became more than legend. It became a symbol, a reminder that somewhere out there, even when no one is watching, someone still chooses to act. Someone still keeps the fire alive. And when the world falls silent, when hope feels too far away, the sound of that roaring engine returns, reminding us that courage rides eternal, even when its rider no longer has a name. There's a stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere. No signs, no lights, just a line of cracked asphalt cutting through a sea of dust. Locals say if you drive it at night, when the air is still and the stars are sharp enough to pierce the sky, you might see a single headlight in the distance. It never gets closer, never fades away. It just rides, steady, patient, like a heartbeat in the dark. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear a whisper beneath the wind. Don't be afraid. Old stories claim that the unknown biker isn't gone. He simply crossed to the other side of the horizon, where time doesn't move and the road never ends. They say he waits there, guarding the threshold between life and whatever comes after, riding endlessly under a sky without dawn. His engine never dies, his tires never wear, and his light never fades. For those lost in fear, for those standing at the edge, he becomes what they need most: a second chance, a breath of courage, a reminder that love never hesitates. Sometimes, on rare nights, people who have survived the impossible talk about dreams. Dreams of open highways stretching forever, of a lone rider waving once before disappearing into the light. They wake up unafraid, with the same strange calm the rescued boy once had all those years ago. And when they step outside, there's always something left behind, a single white feather, or the faint imprint of tire in the dirt. Nothing more, nothing less. Clara's notebook was found years later, discovered by a traveler in a box at a roadside diner. The final page contained only one sentence written in her trembling hand: "He's not gone. He's everywhere the road still breathes." That traveler left the diner and never came back, but the story did, spreading again, told by strangers who felt, somehow, that they weren't strangers at all. The legend kept rolling, passed down through voices, engines, and hearts that refused to forget. And so the unknown biker rides on, beyond time, beyond name, beyond the fire and the wind. He is the hum beneath the world's chaos, the echo that follows every act of courage, the spirit that whispers through every engine that dares to start. The road will always remember him. The wind will always carry him. And somewhere, when someone is about to give up, they'll hear that sound again, the roar of salvation on two wheels, rising from the dark, promising that even in the silence of forever, angels still ride fast. The road has always been a mirror of life, long, uncertain, filled with turns we can't predict. Some paths cross ours for a moment and change everything forever. The unknown biker was never just a man or a myth. He became a symbol of what we all hope to be when the world tests us. Someone who acts when it matters most, who chooses courage over comfort and love over fear. His story isn't just about rescue. It's about purpose, about how, even in silence, some souls continue to move forward, leaving behind trails of light for the rest of us to follow. When we look back at the moments that shaped us, we rarely remember the easy ones. We remember the fire, the danger, the near misses, and the invisible hands that pulled us through. The biker was at hand for many, but his legend reminds us of something deeper, that each of us has the power to become that force for someone else. You don't need wings or wheels to save a life. Sometimes, all it takes is a heartbeat of courage, a second of compassion, a choice to not look away. And maybe that's the real reason he disappeared. Not because he was gone, but because his mission was complete. He planted the seed of bravery in every person who heard his story, turning fear into strength, despair into motion. Now, when the world feels cold or empty, when the noise of doubt drowns out hope, all we need to do is listen closely. That low hum, that echo of thunder beneath the silence, it's not just the sound of an engine. It's the reminder that the spirit of goodness never really stops riding. So, the next time you find yourself on a lonely road, remember him. Remember that even in the darkest night, there's always someone, or something, pushing you forward, unseen but near. The wind on your face, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the courage to take one more step, all of it is the same promise he carried. That love moves faster than fear, and light travels farther than darkness ever will. If this story touched something inside you, if it made you think, or feel, or simply believe again, stay with us. Subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and let others know what the road has taught you. Because legends like his only live on when they're told, and every time his story is remembered, somewhere out there, the unknown biker rides again.